So watching Alien Resurrection for the first time, I have heard so much divisive rhetoric about this film in my comment sections, people talking about how it's unwatchable, it's terrible. Some people don't seem to mind it. Some people compare it to Romulus, which I don't agree with at all. But everyone has their own opinions. I'm a newcomer to this franchise, so I'm just checking it out, seeing if it's for me. Not really blinded by nostalgia. I have no agenda in this. I'm just saying, do I like these films? And as for Resurrection, while I don't think it's a good movie at all, I think it actually has some pretty interesting things it's trying to explore. Not always executed that well, most of the time actually. But I liked some of the things they were trying to do. As we're going to get into it, I'm going to break it down for you. Let's talk about it. So Alien Resurrection is obviously the film in this franchise where Ripley comes back, and this film's taking a little bit of a different approach with the xenomorphs. It's more scientific. You have the company, they're exploring these scientific experiments on the xenomorphs, on humans, kind of like crossbreeding, doing all these weird things related to the creatures. And I actually really appreciated that angle, honestly, because when you binge a franchise, especially for the first time, it's very easy to get caught up in just a brain-melting experience where they all blend together. It just feels like you're watching the same thing over and over again. That's actually the problem I have with Halloween, honestly, most of the time when I do that franchise. But I liked that this film felt different. Even though it didn't always work, they were trying new things. I thought the director had some balls for attempting some of this stuff, knowing it was going to piss off a lot of fans. So yeah, that's something I just enjoyed and I appreciated. And I always like whenever a movie takes a spin and tries to kind of stick out on its own. I feel like Resurrection does do that. I also liked the xenomorphs design at certain points, and I actually thought in some scenes I liked the way it looked better than the previous 3 entries. I thought it looked really cool the first time you're introduced to it and it's locked up. When it does the close-up on its face like it always does, I thought it looked good. But it kind of grew on me as the film went on and it started to get worse because it is just so green looking and it's so wet. And I understand it drools or there's steam or something related to it, but why does it look like somebody has a faucet right over its head, just dripping water at all points? It kind of took me out of it. I don't know who signed off on that decision. So yeah, I liked it at the beginning and it just kind of got stupid as the film went on. But sticking with the xenomorph, I actually liked how they made the xenomorph pretty smart in this. They always talk about in these films that it's the perfect organism. It's smart. It understands humans. And I actually feel like this is the first film you really see that, where you feel like this creature might actually be smart. Because they keep mentioning it in the other films, but they just kind of run at the cast in those other films. They just run at them and just fight them and just get shot or they kill them. It's not really that tactical. In this film, I feel like the creatures are a lot smarter, at least the way they're kind of written and depicted, where they're using vents and grabbing people from above, and they're just stealthy and they're kind of taking a tactical approach. So I liked that. I like the fact that they keep harping on the fact this is a perfect organism. It's smart, it hunts. And this is probably the film so far of the first 4 that I think it feels like it's the smartest creature. I have this personal rule with films where I go into it open-minded, I give them some liberties, but once you establish a rule that is serious and I have to take it serious, I hold you accountable. So, you say in these films, it's a perfect organism, they have acid for blood, and this film uses that. They hunt, they're tactical, they're trying to flank with the face huggers as a distraction, they use the acid for kills. Again, it's commendable because when you have so many entries in a franchise, I understand that it's just easier to take liberties and ignore rules set before because you have more fun that way. But I think this film, for the most part, tries to stay true to the rules they made. So again, commendable. I appreciated it. I also thought that compared to the previous entries we had so far, I thought this film has some pretty cool and memorable kills, and the gore's actually pretty gnarly at points, and I was not expecting that. Especially the chestburster scene from a facehugger, I thought that was done incredibly well in this film, especially compared to the previous ones. I thought it looked a lot more realistic, it looked a lot more violent. I was on board with that shit. I was like, let's go. Can we get some more of this? Lastly, and the most divisive part of this film probably is the ending and what they're trying to do with that weird creature. I didn't have a problem with what they were trying to do from a story point and be different, but I have this idea that if you're trying to do something related to special effects, CGI, practical effects, whatever they did with that thing, it has to hold up for the amount of time it's on screen. So if you just have terrible special effects, I don't care if that was the best story ever. That thing just looks so stupid. It is not worth having on screen for the amount of time they did. You need to write around that. You can't just have an audience look at something that's done special effects wise terribly, and that's what that looks like. It does not hold up at all. This film actually loves using special effects and CGI and explosions and all of the stuff, and they clearly either didn't have the budget or they didn't have the means to do it. They didn't know how to do this in a way where it looked realistic, similar to other movies like Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. This movie's special effects just look terrible, and they love using them, and you just need to avoid doing that. Otherwise, it just takes us out of it. They should have been more creative with what they were trying to do and how they showed this monster, use more shadows, foreshadowing. Just having it on screen for 20 straight minutes, it just looked terrible. So I appreciated what they were trying to do, but Yeah, you can't do that if it looks like shit. But moving over to the important part, what I didn't like about this. Now, objectively speaking, I think this film overall, everybody, Ripley included, Winona Ryder, I think this film has atrocious acting. So bad, in fact, I'd have thought at one point, and I wondered if Winona Ryder and Ron Perlman made like a prop bet of who could shoot him worse and still get paid, because neither of these two acted like they cared at all. Nobody felt scared the way they delivered their lines. I just thought the acting of this entire movie was dog shit. It was awful. Some of the worst acting I've seen in a movie in a long time. Ron Perlman in particular, this guy, his role in particular, I don't know if it was his acting, how he was directed. He is one of the worst characters I can remember in a film in ages. He's like acting like a monkey at certain points. He's the ultimate cartoon character. And it's also unbelievable because I know what he sounds like, and he doesn't talk like that in this movie. So I don't know if he changed his voice to sound cartoony or if he was dubbed over, somebody did his audio. I don't know what it is, but that's not what he sounds like. So every time he talked, it took me out of it because I'm like, that's not Ron Perlman talking, but he is. Much like one of the reasons I hated Alien 3, I thought the lighting in this film was an absolute mess, where they're trying to do what they did in the first two, like you're on this dark spaceship, it's really grainy and grimy, but it feels like they didn't know how to do it technically. So you have a lot of scenes that are just way too dark, you can't see what's going on. Then some scenes like Alien 3 where it's very orange and yucky and it's just that ugly looking film I just don't want to see. Some scenes where it's completely fine, it's bright, you can see everything. Then they have these scenes, like 5 or so scenes, where they just use an abundance of like strobe lights. They need an epilepsy warning, like it hurt my eyes. It's the same thing over and over again. It's just kind of cycling between those 4, and I thought all of them were equally a mess, but they stood out. They also turned Ripley into this weird hybrid of like Neo from the Matrix and some primalistic creature who's going around smelling everybody. A weird scene that's out of place with Ron Perlman and her where they're playing basketball, which makes sense because he's a cartoon character in this. When I saw that scene, I thought, oh shit, here we go. We're going to do something unique with Ripley. She's going to be like really strong, Superman. She's going to be a badass in this. And they just don't really go anywhere with it. So, you know, much like 3, you don't really have any characters to root for in this. Ripley's kind of just meh. And then you have a bunch of cartoon characters that don't really feel like they're acting. So kind of a hard watch in that regard. This movie also has a lot of dumbass decision making and plot writing so that the story can move along. Like, I understand that we're housing and experimenting on these xenomorphs. We have dozens of them. But when you put them in these cages in these rooms that have one thin sheet of metal between them and the escape that's going to take over the station, seems pretty dumb when you know that their blood is acid. So that's something else this movie suffers from a lot. They also completely removed the face huggers. And I was like, where are the face huggers? Because I actually think they're creepier and scarier than the xenomorph. I don't like spiders. I don't like these little critters crawling around. So the fact they were only in here for like a minute or two, I just think that's a huge creative whiff. You gotta have face huggers, you gotta have a chest burster scene, you gotta do all of that, man. It's an alien movie. There's some pretty noticeable pacing issues to this as well, because the aliens first get out and there's some action and you think it's on now, like the aliens are out, we're in the middle of a thriller. And then they just kind of disappear for like 45 minutes or an hour. I don't know if they're singing Kumbaya, where they went, but you just have to stay with these boring characters for about an hour, get nothing out of it. It's just paced really poor. It's very front and back loaded. It's not balanced at all. While I mentioned earlier that I actually like the xenomorphs look at certain points, it feels a lot more like you're watching a traditional slasher in this than a monster movie. It just feels like you're watching a guy moving around in an alien suit, like it's a human. The way it acts, the way it moves, its hands, its design, it just feels a lot more human-like, which again kind of breaks immersion in the fact we're watching Alien. It just feels like we're watching Halloween in space. There's one scene in particular that completely broke my immersion, and I just thought, okay, this is getting stupid. It was related to water when they're swimming away from the xenomorphs. There's like a crew of 12 people, they're swimming away, and there's no way all 12 of these guys are like Olympic swimmers. They're underwater for 3 minutes at a time. You'd be lucky to find one person in the group who could stay under for as long as all of them do, and it's just, whenever they write a scenario where somebody has to stay underwater for like 3 minutes, I just think it's stupid and it's a lazy way. Just avoid it. It's so unbelievable. Takes me out of it every time. And lastly, I just need to point out the ultimate scene from cartoon character Ron Perlman. They're flying away. The ship is on fire. He says, "Who's burning?"
What's burning? Us! Shit! You're right! No!
It's like, are we even trying to be serious, man? Like, that's something straight out of Courage the Cowardly Dog. What are we doing? So overall, guys, I don't even know what I would say about this film. Is it so bad it's good? Is it just bad? I'm not really sure, you know, I'm kind of on the fence about that, but I will say it is significantly better than Alien 3. There's a few things I did enjoy. The majority didn't work and I didn't. Is it the worst movie ever? Probably not. Would I ever watch this movie again? Definitely not. It almost avoided it, but in the end, I don't think it could run from its fate of being dog shit. So it's not as bad as Alien 3, but it's still bad. And I do need to point out that I've seen some people comparing the ending of this to Alien Romulus and just comparing those movies overall. And I have to say, I don't agree at all. And if you think that, put down the crack pipe, man. So let me know what you guys think of Alien Resurrection down below. Do you agree, disagree with any of my ideas? Do you think it's one of the best or the worst in the franchise? Let me know all of it in the comments down below. I read them. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? I do it all on this channel. New releases, scary stuff, old school videos, all of it. Join me down below. That's all I got in this video. Peace.